There is nothing that has necessarily changed externally, especially right when we have that shift internally. Our external world is still the same, yet our perception of it, our experience of it, the way that we work with it, has been altered. And in that altering, we can then experience an abrupt change, a sudden increase, or a dramatic advance. Quantum leaps happen all the time. Hey friends, welcome back to Make It Inevitable. I am your host, Stephenie Zamora, and today I want to talk about what quantum leaps are and how we experience more of them. Quantum leaps is something that a lot of people don't like the idea of because it is used so heavily in marketing, specifically around coaches having a quantum leap in their income. When we start to see a lot of things in the online space that are used for marketing, we tend to have a more negative association to them because we associate them with being sold to, being marketed to, being kind of drawn into something that maybe isn't real, maybe is a scheme. So first, I want to talk about what a quantum leap is. It is an abrupt change, a sudden increase, or a dramatic advance. That is what a quantum leap means. It applies to more than just money. We can experience a quantum leap in any and all areas of our life at any given time, regardless of what our circumstances are. Quantum leaps in our context come from small internal shifts. Shifts in perception, shifts in our belief system, shifts in our worldview, and shifts in our way of being and how we engage with life. When we are able to work with and shift these things on an internal level, it can sometimes feel like a big change internally, especially when we shift our worldview and we start to see and engage with the world differently. But it is a small tweak. There is nothing that has necessarily changed externally, especially right when we have that shift internally. Our external world is still the same, yet our perception of it, our experience of it, the way that we work with it, has been altered. And in that altering, we can then experience an abrupt change, a sudden increase, or a dramatic advance. Quantum leaps happen all the time. And one of the best ways that we do that is through this deeper work that we talk about a lot on the show, understanding our subconscious winning strategy and how it ultimately gets in the way of us having that big, impossible desire that we really deeply want. Understanding our subconscious programming as a whole. What beliefs do we hold that have been there since we were itty bitty tiny little tots before our conscious mind came online around the ages of 5 to 7? We formed this belief system that has been the foundation for everything in our life. Our perception of self, our perception and interpretation of others, how we interpret and internalize the things that we experience, the things that we see. All of that comes from this fundamental belief system that has been there since before we had any ability to decide what and what did not belong in there. So this internal subconscious programming shapes our worldview. It influences how we move through life, how we interpret and assign meaning to everything that we experience. If we can shift that, we can suddenly experience life differently. I want to share some quantum leap experiences from my own journey. The first one that comes to mind was 2017. I was pretty much at the bottom of my bottom in terms of financial struggles. All of this stemming from the traumatic loss that I experienced in 2014, the PTSD that I had that really caused my business to die a slow death. And that PTSD led me into an abusive relationship with an addict who further traumatized me. I had a slew of health issues from severe, intense panic attacks to really awful, horrific, burning back and hip pain. I could hardly move, let alone lie down or sit. Everything was incredibly painful to the point that even just trying to move myself in a position was nearly impossible. I had adrenal fatigue so badly that it would exhaust me to walk from the couch to the kitchen. And I developed dysphagia, which is the inability to swallow. I didn't eat or drink for 9 days. I choked on my own saliva for 9 days. I had one IV in the middle of that. And even after I started swallowing again, it was nearly a year before I could eat and drink normally. All of this took a toll on me as a person, on my business, on my income. And after the abusive relationship, I really felt like a shell of a person. I didn't feel worthy and deserving of anything good after the loss, trauma of it, the abuse. And I really didn't care a whole lot about making ends meet, paying my bills, taking care of my life. It was enough for me to just exist and get through each day. That took a huge toll on my finances. I wasn't even trying to make money. I really didn't care if I did or not. So in 2017, I ran out of money on a road trip with my mentor on my way to Canada for a workshop of his. Ran out of money in the middle of the night in the middle of Iowa. And I realized I didn't have a penny to my name. In fact, I owed the bank money because I was overdrawn. And at that time, because I wasn't striving to make anything happen, I certainly wasn't magnetic to opportunities and clients and anything. There was no income coming my way. Absolutely nothing. Nothing on the books, no prospects. I had a $150 check that I knew was coming to my P.O. box from collections that we had to send a client to. But that was it. I ran out of money. And I had been struggling for years, for a few years since my loss, to keep myself afloat. I finally bottomed out. I finally ran out of money. And I was very fortunate that my mentor was there with me. He was able to cover the expenses of the trip and let me pay him back later. And I remember going home, going to my P.O. box, getting that $150 check and cashing it so that I would have that cash for gas and groceries, not knowing if or when any other money would come in. All while my negative bank balance is accruing more fees. It was a really, really challenging low point. There were a lot of low points on the journey, but that one in particular was deeply stressful, deeply eye-opening to the fact that I wasn't making money and I really wasn't taking control of my life. And I really didn't know how to anymore because I didn't have the drive to, the desire, the motivation, the care. A couple of weeks later, after living off that $150 check, eating out of my pantry, I got a random website client who paid in full. And so suddenly I had a few $1,000s. And with that few $1,000s, I bought a ticket to a client's event and bought a plane ticket, got myself a really cheap Airbnb. I could not afford to stay at the resort where everyone else was. Could barely afford the plane ticket, the Airbnb, and the ticket to the event. But I felt so called to go. And I went and I had this incredible experience learning about mindset pieces, learning about sales, connecting with other driven women, seeing my own client commanding a room from a very soft, purposeful power that she had within her. And something about that resonated for me. I knew that I had that in me somewhere. I had just lost it. I had just forgotten about it. So having this 2.5-day experience altered what was going on for me internally. It shifted my perception of myself, of life, of my business. It gave me clarity around what I wanted to do, who I wanted to work with, what I wanted to offer, and who I wanted to be inside all of that. It allowed me to connect back into my power as a coach, as a creator, as a business owner, as a person. It sparked something in me that had been gone for so long. Nothing changed externally. I flew home from that event, got in my car again to go back to Canada for another event with my mentor, had an additional activating experience while there. Everything shifted internally for me. And when I came back, I felt ready to start making money again, to start moving again, to start caring about my life again, to start rebuilding everything that had come undone from all the trauma, the loss, the abuse. I felt ready. There was a shift internally, a shift in my way of being, a shift in my frequency, a shift in my sense of deservingness and self-worth, a shift in my desires. These are big shifts internally. But when we look at them externally, nothing has changed. My circumstances were still what they were. I had still been someone who ran out of money and was living off of a few $1,000s at that point. But I had shifted internally. And because of that, everything began to reconfigure around me to match that. Clients started coming in left and right. I marketed a few things and I got more clients. I started hiring team because my energy was organized around growth. I hired a coach for building an agency, joined a mastermind, and I started making more money than I had ever made in the history of my business. And in 2018, so all of this that happened, all this story was at the end of 2017. When I bottomed out, I ran out of money and I started having those shifts. And then I went into 2018, transformed internally, completely different perspective, perception, interpretations. The meaning that I assigned to things was different. The way that I moved through life was different. I was tapped into a different frequency. I was showing up as a different version of myself, a person who not only believed that she could have what she wanted, but expected it, engaged with life from that place. I say this a lot. We live in a frequency-based universe. That is not woo-woo. That is not magical thinking. That is science. That is measurable science. Everything in our universe, everything in our world vibrates. And like I said in the last episode, when you shift your frequency, you create resonance with different things. I shifted my frequency through these internal shifts. And when that happened, I started to align with different people and opportunities. I didn't do anything differently at first, simply shifted internally. And that was a mix of things. That was a mix of experiences. That was a mix of certain mentors and coaches. That was a mix of being in different environments. But ultimately, it was the processing work, the active processing that I did and the internal processing that I did to come back to myself, to claim my desires, to get clear, to come back into my life and my body, to raise my self-worth, to care, to feel that fire again. And money just started raining from the sky. Clients just started coming in left and right. So we hear these stories. This is why we don't like quantum leap conversation in marketing, is we only hear that part of the story. It shifted my way of being and everything changed. Money fell from the sky. Clients came out of nowhere. My entire life transformed. My entire business transformed. My bank account transformed. I made 6 figures by the middle of that year, 6 months to 6 figures. So this is the story that we're often fed through marketing. The reason that it doesn't resonate for us is because something is missing in that conversation. And that is not only that, there was an internal shift that happened, that we changed our way of being, that we started engaging with life differently, that we rewired and repatterned our beliefs, our subconscious programming. We shifted our energetics. We embodied the person that we needed to be. We moved in expectation. Even that, those are nice intellectual ideas. How do we do that? How do we make that internal shift a reality so that then we can experience an abrupt change, a sudden increase, or a dramatic advance? That is what is left out of these conversations. And even in me talking about this, you still might not like the answer. That is because it is all the work that we have been talking about. You have to claim your desires. You have to know what you really want. You, not what other people want for you or expect of you, not what you think you should want, not what old you wanted even a week ago, not what your ego wants. What do you desire? Does that come from a place of full alignment, of understanding your purpose, who you're here to be, and the work that you're here to do? Are you conscious to and willing to face and work with all of the deeper pieces? There were specific blocks for me I had incredibly low self-worth. I did not feel deserving, and therefore I did not desire even to be able to pay my bills. I literally did not desire that. I was offered a lot of money and a secure opportunity that I said no to. And my exact words to that person were, I think that you severely overestimate my desire to pay my bills. I did not care. I was that broken. I had low self-worth. Didn't feel deserving, didn't feel worthy of good. I didn't feel that way because I had unresolved trauma. I had experienced abuse that I had not processed, that I had not worked with, that I couldn't even name yet. I still felt guilty for the loss. And if you haven't heard my story, you can check out my book, Unravel. We'll link to it in the show notes. It's all about this experience that I went through. I ended a relationship and he committed suicide. I felt guilt for that. I blamed myself. I had all of this that needed to be processed. And through the abusive relationship, through having PTSD, through all these different experiences that I went through, there was more trauma being stored in my body. There's more that needed to be felt and healed and processed in a productive way. That all limited me. That all kept me in a state of feeling undeserving, unworthy. I had no motivation because I didn't care about anything anymore because I was so broken because of the trauma, because of the low self-worth, because of the disconnection from self. I didn't know who I was anymore. I had this business still that I had had before my loss, but I didn't feel like that business owner anymore. I didn't feel like that leader. Who was I to coach anyone? Who was I to go out and tell people that I could help them with anything? All internal stuff, the deep, hard stuff that we don't want to look at, that we think we can just bypass. But we have to look at and heal that. We have to process it. We have to repattern it. And when I tell you that that can happen rapidly, in and of itself, never mind the quantum leaps that will occur afterwards, I mean that with my whole heart. And I have seen that in my own journey, and I have seen that with my clients. You can pull trauma out by its roots with one process. Sometimes, oftentimes, we need more. It moves in layers. There's different traumas that have stacked on one another that have to be processed one by one. There's certain traumas that we don't remember, memories that we have lost that need to be addressed from childhood, from relationships, from experiences in life. All of that is in there. But it can move quickly if you're willing to process it. And there are a variety of ways to process. We will link to acupressure recordings that you can purchase, you can do by yourself, and we will link to process sessions with me. Those are two options. There are more. Yes, you can process on your own by feeling through, thinking through things, making sense of them intellectually. You can journal. You can talk them out with trusted people in your life. But the type of process work that I am speaking to that allows us to have a dramatic shift internally requires support more often than not, because it requires us going to places that we don't want to go and that our subconscious often will not let us go. So I encourage you to find the modality and the support that's right for you, and know that we have resources. We will link to them in the show notes. I even gave you a small process in the emotions episode where you can start to feel through and actually process in a productive way your emotions. We have to process. And when we process, and we process in specific ways, we can grab old stored traumas, unresolved grief, limiting beliefs, subconscious winning strategies, and we can pull them out by their roots. In one fell swoop, you can go into a process and you can come out feeling altered. You can go into acupressure having a belief, having a fear, having a trauma, having an ailment in your body that's like a level 10 on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most awful that it feels, the most uncomfortable, the most running every aspect of your life. And you can come out not resonating with that at all, not understanding why you ever felt that way, why you ever believed those things. There are modalities, and there are ways to access them regardless of your financial circumstances. But you have to be willing to do that work, or you won't seek out those modalities. You won't ask for support. You won't find somebody within your budget. You won't be willing to trade your time or energy for it because you're avoiding it. And I get it. These things are hard. To know me is to know that I will never sugarcoat any aspect of this work, because that does a disservice to you. Because if you go into it thinking, oh, well, Stephenie said it's fun and easy and I'll be all better afterwards, and it's painful and it's hard and you have more layers that you need to move through, you're going to believe that something's wrong with you. Something's broken in you. You're not capable of healing, and that's not true. The process is different for each of us. There are some things that I have moved within an hour or two, within a single session. There are other things that have moved in layers, giving me more leverage and freedom and space, giving me back more of myself bit by bit. Both are perfect. Both can then create external quantum leaps. I had another quantum leap this summer. I was going through some deep processing around past relationships, around where my self-worth was still low, even all these years after the loss, the trauma, the abuse. I was able to see that I still had low self-worth in certain ways, that it was still affecting me in certain ways. And so I processed that. I worked with it. I was able to see how disconnected from myself, my truth, my purpose I had become. And I worked through that on my own and with my support people. And I experienced a quantum leap where everything had been stagnant and stalled out and quiet, where I had no motivation, drive. It was just kind of aimless. I was working, I was making money. I moved myself back to New Mexico, got myself a camper, did all these things. But I was aimless to a degree. And I did that internal work. And everything shifted externally because so much changed internally. Suddenly I felt different. It vibrated differently. I was an open channel for ideas and visions. I was inspired. I was motivated. My energy came back. All of this was internal. And the external reconfigured to match it. That is not magical thinking. It's not marketing speak. It is how our frequency-based universe works when you engage with it differently, from a different energy and a different frequency. Your experience of it is altered. What you align with, what you create resonance with, what you magnetize to you is altered. And it can move quickly because you went to bed existing in one reality with an internal belief system and worldview and perception and interpretations and traumas and all these stored emotions, and you woke up in a different world, in a different experience. Everything is altered. Your relationship to everything is altered. That creates abrupt change, sudden increase, dramatic advances. And that happened for me. All of a sudden, everything was in flow again. All of a sudden, the right people and opportunities came into my field. All of a sudden, I started to get physically healthier, to lose the weight that I had been carrying around, to have this energy, this surge of energy every day. Massive ideas left and right, massive clarity. I launched new things. My life transformed. It quantum leaped, seemingly overnight. And that is because the internals shifted. That is how quantum leaps occur. Small internal shifts, seemingly small, they're massive, but you can do a process. You can pull something out by its root. You can repattern your subconscious. You can completely eliminate any resonance to a limiting belief or fear. You can feel something that's been stored in your body. And your experience of the world is different because you have shifted. And then everything reconfigures around you, and it will happen rapidly when this is done cleanly and thoroughly. Our external experience shifts rapidly because we are engaging with life differently, which doesn't just mean that new things appear out of nowhere. It means that we experience them differently. We see things that we couldn't see before. All of this comes from the deeper internal work. Are you willing to do that work? That doesn't mean that you have to hire someone, that you have to pay money. There are ways to access this work. There are different modalities that are available. Are you willing to lean in and go out and find them and do the work? And do the work as much as it takes to move through those layers that might be there. Life will open to you, not because you checked some box that life required that you check first, but because you have opened to life. There is a reflection that happens. This is a frequency-based universe. If I open to life, life opens to me. If I choose this life fully, life chooses me back. If I show up in a certain frequency, I create resonance with everything and everyone that is also vibrating at that frequency. That's how it works. So notice any hesitation, any resistance, any icky feelings that you have around the idea of a quantum leap, and why. There's probably something to process there. Sometimes it's that we don't think it's possible for us because we're not having enough conversation about what it actually takes to do the seemingly small internal shifts to create the external transformation. Not just incremental changes, but true transformations, changing how something occurs or how we relate to how it occurs. That's what transformation means. Quantum leaps are exponential transformation, seemingly overnight. So quickly it makes our head spins. That is what a quantum leap is, and quantum leaps come down to the seemingly small internal shifts. And to make these seemingly small internal shifts, we have to be willing to do the deeper work that clears anything that's keeping us in a limited belief system, a small, narrow worldview, old subconscious programming. We have to move anything that's been stored in our body, trauma, grief, unprocessed emotions, all of it. We have to do this deeper work. So notice your relationship to the idea of a quantum leap, and also, where would you like to experience one? There was an area of your life, your relationships, your work, your finances, your health that could be exponentially transformed, seemingly overnight, in exactly the way that you desired. Would it be worth doing that deeper work, that deeper healing and clearing work? Would it be worth investing in, taking the time, facing into the process of clearing all these things that you've been avoiding or storing or may not even know are there? Would it be worth it to have a quantum leap in this area of your life? Probably. And if you're saying no, there's something there that's blocking you that also needs to be cleared. We can create freedom and leverage if we're willing to do this work. And there are so many ways to do this work. And we will link to different options, how you can work with me, with us, in the show notes. But just get clear. Where do you want to experience a quantum leap, and what would that look like? Is it worth doing this deeper, more challenging work to have an experience? If you don't think it's worth it, why don't you think it's worth it? Be willing to lean in, be willing to go there, be willing to go where it's uncomfortable and hard, because you will be better for it and life can truly transform overnight.